fun of that.
Well, we have to
Okay.
sing. We have to sing.
So, everyone, there's a surprise here. And not everybody is in on the surprise.
Nope.
So, you ready? You ready for this?
Yes. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
Happy
birthday to
birthday
you.
to you. Happy
Happy
birthday,
birthday, dear
To
dear
son.
God.
Saad. Happy
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 birthday
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 to
to you.
you.
Thank you.
That melody.
That's
Wow.
the first. That's the first in this post-pandemic world. I haven't celebrated birthday over Zoom yet, but hey, here we are.
We talked
Oh,
about
we have
waiting
never.
because it's in 2 days, but we're like, but we don't have a live show in 2 days. So we got to take advantage of this. And you guys got to hear my horrible singing. So it's a win win.
Also, who celebrates birthdays anymore? It's a birthday week always, so might as well.
That's a really good
Yeah.
point. It's another reason why you got to come down for Stampede this year.
I'm going to. I'm going to. It's now it's becoming a thing.
Okay, so just to go and start off, we like to have a question of the day. And it's something that doesn't have to do with our topic, it's something fun. Does anybody have a question of the day for our guest today? Birthday boy? Anything you'd like to know from our guests?
Um, I'd like to know how many marketers there are in the chat versus sellers because I'm excited to talk marketing today more than sales. So yeah,
Wow.
that's what I'm curious about. I'm not gonna
Ooh.
say, oh, let's say I want to hear where people are from. Like, I'm not there yet, but you know.
Okay, so in the chat, let's see. Where are all our marketers and sellers? Let's see what our audience is looking like today. What Saad really wants to know is who generates more pipeline, sales or marketing. He just didn't want to say it, but
And you
will
we're
be
admitted
discussed.
it almost.
we're starting early. We're getting into it. Okay then.
Hey, why not? And maybe we'll change it up today and we'll have all four of us in and we'll just keep going. What do you think, Laura?
I think that will be perfect. It will be a fantastic ping pong.
Okay, so in the chat, guys, sales, marketing, seller, always be selling. A
Look
little
at
different from
that.
the ABCs. That's good. Marketer, there we go. Camille, you got friends.
Perfect.
Nice. Not that it's a competition, Saad.
The
But
more
yes, I have
marketers we get.
friends
I'm just here for
for the
Camille's
record.
audience. It's like, hey,
Content
Look
marketer,
at
yes.
that.
I was sending out all the invites, and I was just going through my list, and I just and it hit me, and I was like, I need more marketing friends in my life or in my network, I guess. So
I genuinely thought you were going through sorting by Toronto and you're like, who will stop me in the street and be like, are you Saad?
that was one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me in my entire life. I swear, I thought I was getting jumped. It was also at like 10 o'clock at night. So this was right after the B2B Power Hour last week, or no, the day before. I was coming back home with some friends, and we're in the Eaton Center area, which it's near the University of Ryerson. It's a little sketch, and some dude in a black jacket just walks up to me, and I'm at first I just, and he pokes me. I'm like, all right, it's happening, and he's like, man, I know you from LinkedIn. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I saw your phone calls on LinkedIn. I was like, is this actually happening? Normally, I'm pretty collected. I'm good with my words. I just mumble. I was like, oh, thank you. What's your name? And yeah, just good thing and goodbye.
Are you in
Amazing.
marketing? Like,
Are you in marketing? That should have been the question. That's going to be a go-to question now.
Just always be qualifying.
Yeah. You asked if I have a question, but Camille, I think I want to ask from you as well. Before you came to Dooley, or I guess with everybody, like what did sales and marketing at Lemon mean to you? That's I guess that's the golden question. Or was it even there for you? Did you feel it? Is it even here right now? Um, and yeah, for the audience as well, I'd be curious to hear.
I'm
Yeah,
really
it's a good
trying to get
question.
Morgan on board. So if he's listening, Camille's going to go and lay it down right now.
No pressure, no pressure.
Before-
No, yeah.
before
So
I-
I think
yeah, go ahead.
like thinking about sales and marketing alignment, it's like, is there trust there, right? Like, and would you if need be, like switch jobs, you know what I mean? Like what would you be able to like cover for the other person? Not that I should clarify that like I couldn't be like as good of a BDR or an AE like as our current team. And I think that's part of the trust situation is like if we needed to like swap roles or whatever for whatever reason, like would you be willing to do that, you know, like for the other team? Because like I think like the modern seller like are also marketers, right? Like really good sellers also like know how to fill their pipeline. And I also think that like really good marketers like work farther down in the funnel, are willing to like educate to the point and start those conversations that are kind of like uncomfortable and feel like, hey, this is more of like a sales conversation. But know their product well enough and like know their value well enough that like they're willing to work both ways. So I think like once you have that, when you're willing to kind of like, I think about it almost like Saad, like we talk about basketball sometimes, right? And so if you're able to do like switch defense a little bit, I think like that's kind of a good way to think about it. And then like the other part of the trust though is recognizing like that they're different skills and like equally important, right? And so recognizing like, oh, what you do is like really valuable and like is just as important. And I think in some companies it's like we have like completely separate benches, right? Like you have like sales sitting on this side, you have like marketing sitting on this side. So I think when you get to the point when you recognize both of these are essential skills and like departments and they work better together, and then also just being willing to, at a startup especially, like being willing to be a seller or being willing to be a marketer like when it calls for it. So those are some of the things that I've seen. And then as far as like at other organizations, some ways that it's like worked out is really like that handover process, like nailing the handover process of like, again, like speed to lead of, you know, if I'm on social and somebody's kind of like raised their hand to be like, hey, I'd want a demo at some point, which like this has happened, right? Or hey, I'd be interested in like learning more. Be like, am I the best person to handle this? This is where it comes to like you might be if like there's no one else available and like you need that like speed to answer that question. Or like, can I, or should I pass it off like to someone else who knows something better? So for instance, the other day, like I gave a really probably crappy demo because it called for it. Like it was just more of like a coffee talks. Yeah.
I mean, we have an opening on the sales side.
Naturally it was like, hey, like, you know, wanting to know more about Dooley and what you guys do and had already looked into it himself. And so we just like went over the product and I just talked about how I used it. And then it also made sense to like introduce him to someone who knew how to give a better demo, who knew how to get deeper into it. Right. And so going like that far into it, both in like the handovers from social, the handovers from content, the handovers for events too. So a lot of like modern marketing techniques like are closer to people, are more like about the conversations and like networking. And so naturally you are going to have people asking about your product. So I think as a marketer, you need to know your product and your value well enough to have those conversations, but then also know when to tap out, like when to tap your sales friends in.
Whew. That's getting clipped. Wow, that was great. Saad, do you have anything to go and add to that?
Yeah, so much, but I'm going to keep it in chunks because Camille knows once I start, I can't stop. But let's take a step back to that. I've said this before, and it doesn't, you don't just get up and start being able to do it that way. Our marketers are able to write like sellers and our content converts. The biggest problem in sales and marketing alignment that people talk about is marketing content doesn't convert. As a seller, what I've always been concerned about is like marketing content is always geared towards education, and sales content is always trigger oriented and it's geared towards conversion. Before I came to Dooley, I knew Camille who she was. I followed her on LinkedIn. I was a fan. I was a fan of the brand and everything, and I was beyond excited to get a chance to come and just cold call people and say I'm calling from Dooley, because you find jobs, you don't find brands. I was getting a shot to go sell a brand, but then obviously everything can seem fancy from the outside, and then when you go inside, things are as doomy and gloomy. And this is where the story takes a turn. I'm kidding, it doesn't. But no, it got even better once I joined, because to Camille's point, Dooley is not like any other startups. I was severely impressed by the roster that was already there for the first 50 people that were hired. Everybody had been there, done that. It seemed like everybody sat in a room and asked about all the things that go wrong in SaaS building, this, that, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, we're going to do everything that shouldn't be done. And for me personally, the most impactful thing was I'm not a marketer, but I've worked closely with marketers before, and I have my visions and ideas, but they only go as far as the support that you get and being able to create that thing for what it's supposed to be. So whether it's our webinar leads or partnerships or content leads, the way we social sell on LinkedIn, all that stuff, it's so meticulous and well thought out that the details are what's impressive. Thinking about every small little thing, every playing game of 4D chess, that if you do this, that happens. You're doing this today is going to bring this conversation tomorrow. A very basic example is when I started, we did a LinkedIn writing class. We had Camile and Zoe ran this, and it was a social selling. Strategic LinkedIn strategic writing session. For now, nobody at Dooley is forced to do it, but then we were given the framework of how to hook people, how to just yeah, sure, you're going to be putting out content, but like, what's the point of throwing stuff out there for the sake of, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want it to come back to us. We want the conversation to come back. We want it to turn back. The other thing on top of that from the sales side is it's also our job is to help our marketers think like us as well and help us convert, so that we don't have the marketing created this many demos and they didn't convert. This wasn't done by sales, but this was done by our CS team. But we ran Grok sales sessions where we taught everybody over 3-4 weeks the basics of selling, prospecting, just doing the basic discovery, stuff like that. So if and when Camile or anybody else from our marketing team gets into those conversations and they have somebody who's interested in talking about Dooley, learning more about Dooley, we can find a way to convert them right then and there. I think that's bigger alignment than anything else. I think that's bigger alignment than just a webinar lead converting or this converting or that converting. And I don't know how much trade secrets we can disclose, but Camille said modern marketing. We do things that are not modern. We do screener calls. We do qualification discovery calls. We cold call all our webinar leads, but we're doing it a little differently. We're thinking about them a little differently. We're thinking about the stage at which they're at a little differently. Hence why the conversations that we're having from them are different, and they're converting, and people are open to hearing from us, not just because we're calling from Dooley. Yeah, let's be real, not everybody knows what Dooley is. But then what we're saying to them on the call after is tying into what those marketing topics were, those webinar topics were. And the way sales is taking that conversation forward is it's not risky. It's welcoming. It's inviting. It's intuitive. Yeah.
Nice.
That's amazing. It sounds like what I don't hear this very often, where sellers genuinely know what marketers are doing for them. Marketers understand the fundamentals of sales and what it's doing for them. And so you're not just cross-trained, but you actually respect each other because you know what's involved. It's not just hearsay. And you guys have made it very purposeful. And I have to bring this up because Tyler went and said a really nice compliment to you guys. Shout out to Camille and the rest of the Dooley marketing team. When you have an unbelievable brand that marketing cultivates, it provides amazing air cover for reps to sell. Amen. Dooley is world-class at this. Could not agree more.
Sorry, I was looking at Tyler, such a charmer. No, we just, I think that just goes to show like what Saad and Tyler are saying, like there's just a mutual respect, I think, for every like aspect of the business. And we haven't talked about like CS too much, but CS is a part of the revenue team as well. And account management, like a huge part of our, go-to-market strategy, and hugely important, especially right now. So I think like having that, thinking about the revenue team as a revenue team, instead of like, we have a sales department, a marketing department, and a CS department. This is something that like the CRO of Divvy, like I talked to Sterling the other day, and this is something that he mentioned, is he's like, we think about it as a revenue team, right? Like it's not like separate siloed teams. It's like one revenue team.
Absolutely fantastic. I used to think that it was something smaller startups would be able to tell. It's like, oh, we're the same team. Yeah, but you also fit in one room. So it's pretty easy just to be that one team. And I think this is really, really strong. Camille, Saad mentioned about the session that you kicked off for LinkedIn writing, for social selling, and so on. If we start moving over to social selling, it sounds like it has been started in marketing. Was it?
Social selling starting in marketing. So, okay, so I'll reframe a little bit in that, like, I, for whatever reason, I don't resonate as much with the word like social selling, right? Like, and it's probably because I'm a marketer, right? But I think like it's what Saad was getting at before with like how they approach like outbound or like outbound to inbound. It's like you're starting conversations is like ultimately like what I think like that session was about, was like how do you start conversations. And I think like everything from like our meme strategies to like our more like thought leadership like type strategies, like most of the content that we post like online is to start conversations. And it does, like to its point, right, is like we try to create engaging content that hits like a pain point. And whether it's like humor, like humor works because it hits a pain point, right? Like because you relate to it like really like viscerally. And that's like the best stuff. And so that naturally starts a conversation because you're like, yes, like that's it, like that's my day in a nutshell. So there's that kind of content, and then there's other content that's like from our business is different in that like Saad and Michelle and Chris, like they're sellers, and we sell to sellers, and so they are the experts. So like I've said to Saad before, like a lot of my job is like just putting them like front and center, like you're the experts. Like I don't want to be like front and center. I'm I have like some copywriting skills, and like the content team has some good copywriting skills. I think we can help in those departments, but really like you're the sellers, like you're on the front lines, like you should be our headliners. And so I think leveraging that, and having them be the face, that like starts more conversations, because you can relate better as a seller to someone like Saad or to someone like Michelle, and just the different roles within sales, and they have like more valuable advice like to give. And so I think putting those things front and center does start those conversations as well.
I'll just add here is she means what she just said. She's, how when sometimes people say something in sentences over and over again, that's when they think about this. Camila said this multiple times in meetings that she wants to just highlight our sellers, put us as the faces, and just brand us, just all that stuff. Now that's what we're hearing. There's probably something deeper in her mind. There's probably a deeper grand plan there going on over there. But like, that's powerful. That's very powerful to come into an org and have people. I also respect the fact that she said this. I guess ultimately at Dooley, we respect everybody, and we genuinely, because we respect them, we love them. I want to do right by our marketing team. I want my talk tracks to be tight that they convert. And same thing, I guess, goes back on the other end as well. But tying that into what I was saying earlier was it's powerful to come into an org, and the first thing you're asked is like, hey, you're good at what you do. How do we make you better? Not just my VP of sales asking me this, but the marketing department asking me this. And it didn't happen once.
No.
Last week, I got a message from Camille, hey, can you tell me which webinar leads are converting the most, or which webinar topics are not leads at what percentage? No, what topics, what wordings, what thoughts are converting better. Also, it's not easy to make people thought leaders. It's not easy to just come up with an idea that, oh, we're going to go the thought leadership route and then just do it. These things don't work out the way they do. And it's powerful. Writing for sellers, being a marketer, and then sounding like a seller. Right? So that's a highlight for me. Like Kyle as well. Shout out Kyle. His email copywriting has gone to such a next level extent that the JB sales crew even gave him a shout out on his email copy. They're like, Kyle, this is amazing. And no, they thought I wrote it. I was like, no, it's not me. It's Kyle. Like, we have openings on the marketing team. Please, sorry, on the sales side, if you all want, like, I'm hiring. So,
Well, I'll stop there too. Is like there's like two parts, I think, to marketing. Sometimes there's like your understanding of the customer, but then like your also understanding of the experts, right? And so like in our case, it's like our internal sales experts and then like some external sales experts. And so like one thing that Kyle's done really well, and we've tried to just do as a marketing team in general, is like understand like our voice, like understand Dooley's voice and like really nail that. But then also like, again, like because our sellers are front and center, like what that really ends up being is like, what is Saad's voice? Like, what is Michelle's voice, right? What is like Chris's voice and stuff? And it's not just like, it's not just trying to channel that, like we're actually talking to them like constantly. And so we already know like what their philosophies are on sales, and like do regular, like Diego does regular interviews, you know, with like Chris and Michelle. And so it's like we have their thoughts and we like know their thoughts. And then it's like making sure that any communications that go out are like, what, yeah, what would Saad do, right? Like, what would Saad say? And all, you know, always obviously like checking it by him, and he'll like, you know, give feedback or rewrite things in some cases and stuff. But yeah, but it's been fun to see, because I've seen like some of the emails from before were really good, but it was like still a little bit of like a marketing email. And now like I told Kyle this last one, I'm like, this is Saad, like this is me. And so like I think
even the response that I got,
there.
I even got cheeky responses from other sellers. I'm like, dude, that's it. When you start getting cheeky responses from people, and that response meant nothing. The email hit, and he was just having fun with me. I'm like, that in its own, I shared it in the Slack channel. I was like, you got it. It's there.
Starting conversations, right? Like it's just, it just goes back to that, right? And like that I saw this the other day of like for email specifically. I won't like derail us from social too much, but on email, and this goes for DMs, I think as well, is like maybe like the best way to measure it is not necessarily, there's open rates, right? There's click-through rates and stuff, but I think like the best, like this is working, is somebody responds, right? Like people are like responding to you as if it's like a one-to-one email, not a one-to-many email.
There's a reason why in mails you get the credit back when they respond. You don't get points if they were looked at.
That's a good point. That's a good point. LinkedIn's got it figured out.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. So I have a question for both of you that I get all the time. And I'm sure Saad's experienced this at other companies too. So I'm out selling in the field, and I go to a customer that's on my list. And I start talking to them, and they're like, I'm confused. Marketing just sent me this email and it said this. So when you guys run your campaigns, it sounds like it's not by chance. You're not trying to scale luck. You're very purposeful. Does that extend to how you run your content campaigns and how, you know, you're coordinating with sales to run those campaigns from start to finish? Or what does that look like?
Good question. Camille, take it over.
Sorry, I'll admit, like I was looking at the comments over here, so I'll address like this comment if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Matt says, love putting SMEs at the front of content programs. Any thoughts on how that works if the SME or ICP doesn't work in your company? This is a really good question, because I have like run into this before, and it's tricky. So I think like the obvious answer, a good place to start is like doing a podcast, or even starting that out with like coffee chats, right? Like taking the time to like get to understand like your ICP and be like in there. We say this a lot, and I feel like it's lost its meaning, but like be like in their community, right? And so what that actually means though, like if you're just breaking it down, is like start following people that in your ICP that are experts like in that field that you sell to. Start like finding out who their influencers are, like who they respect at least, like or who's like big in that field, and just like start following that content, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, like wherever they hang out, and sort of like understand like some of the things we're talking about, like how they talk, what they talk about, what's important to them, right? And just be consuming kind of for a little bit, and then but not too far after that, like start commenting on those things, right? Like start just like it can just be questions. It doesn't mean like you have to now be the expert and like say something smart every time. It just means like you're asking questions about something that person finds interesting. And by the way, like this is what people like. Like people like being asked questions like about the things that they love and like about themselves. And so so it'll make you like a likable person. So just start like asking questions and like engaging in that type of content. And then like you can, you know, reach out and about, hey, like, would you mind like taking 15 minutes to like ask or to talk through a couple things like that I had questions about like around this industry, genuinely to want to like learn about the content and about the industry and not to sell to them, right? So you're doing this just like customer research. And then a better way to even like do customer research now, I think, is like to give them something in return. And I think a way that you do that is through podcasts or through lives like this, right? Where it's like, this is beneficial to Saad and I too, because we're able to, one, like think through like sales marketing alignment in real time, right? But then also like have more like exposure and meet new people and do networking. So I think like in this format, it's kind of like a win-win for everyone, because you get the customer research, maybe like you get the content, and you're able to have expert content in general. And then, you know, it works out well for the other person too, because then they also get content and just kind of fuels itself. So I think like this kind of format, Matt, like works well. And farther on, like when you can, like thinking about like how can I bring someone on either full time or as like a creator to help like fuel that content engine. So just some things to think about.
I just want to quickly add to that. I've always thought about that because you probably have to go through your own internal ramp. Because we talk in sales, whatever industry you go to, you can't be an industry expert till you haven't tried to be an industry expert or try to learn what the lingo is, what the problem is, how to solve for. We know all the words. It's the exact same sense. You have to learn how to not just talk like sellers, but talk to sellers, what they think about that psychology, because it's complicated. It's very complex. It's very chaotic. It just, let's be real, it is. And a lot of times you can't box it. It's not black or white. It's more nuanced than anything. So I bet on the back end, like you have to stay on top of all the trends, all the frameworks, all that stuff. Yeah, just wanted to add 2 cents to that. So kudos, more kudos.
Yeah, I want to say too, like it's just try not to use it as a crutch to not learn the product or to not learn the customer, right? Like ultimately, like I think you're going to be the most successful by having like your own point of view. And I think one way that you can get that is by like talking to lots of experts in the field, whether they're in your company or not. And then you start to see patterns. You start to see like, okay, this is their current way of doing things. And are there better ways of doing things? And how does our solution bridge like the gap between like what they're doing now and like a good like end state? So, I mean, I talked to someone like the other day and mentioned like just kind of in passing of like, oh, you know, I've been in sales tech for like less than a year. And they're like, no, you have like there's no way. Like you've only been like sales tech for under a year. So I think like you want to like you want to understand like the topic, right? And so I think you can like learn things faster than people think. Like it doesn't take 10 years to become like an expert in something. Like it going back to like the 10,000 hour rule. Like it's 10,000 hours like of like focus, right? It's not like it's not years. Like you can get those learnings in a short amount of time. Like I joked the other day about startup years, right? Being shorter and faster than regular years. And so that's true. Like it's you can get as much out of it as you want. You just have to like want to understand the experts and eventually become an expert. So another thing to think about.
Last point on that, and we'll go to the next question, is the credibility piece. If your marketers are sounding like your ICP, that just creates the idea that the business gets it. It's simple. People will, doesn't matter if it's a seller, it's a marketer, CS. People will like, oh, yeah, you get it. Okay, can we talk to your sales team? So the line that I love using with my team is this: we sell to sales leadership, right? So if selling is the video game, then isn't selling to sales leaders the final boss battle? by the time you get to the final boss in a video game, all your tips and tricks and everything goes out the frame. You need to basically use all your skills. You need to be a master of your craft. You need to be a Jedi. There's new tactics going. People are coming up with new tactics for selling every single day. If myself, my team, our marketing team, our CS team, if our job becomes to master tactics, we're looking at exhaustion, desperation, and bye bye happy life. Versus if we can find a way to master these frameworks, master our ICP, not just the sales team, but everybody, I have more confidence in doing 50% of the work. Not that I do 50% of the work, but that's because I have more trust in that other 50% getting taken over by the rest of my org. So I don't have to work at 200%. 100% is good enough. As in, that's the biggest problem within the tech space, startup space. Everybody's exhausted. Now, don't get me wrong, we're probably exhausted as well, but I'd rather this here at Dooley than anywhere else. That is all.
I wanted to just throw in one thing to Camile's, what you were talking about, like the evolution as you're understanding your ICP. I think of LinkedIn profile. You start with like the digital resume, and then it's like the full like sales landing page, and then it becomes the resource center. And people always ask, which sells more?
Mm-hmm.
Well, which one earns trust at scale? And if you think of how you're evolving to have those conversations, this is why I love you guys. This is why I think Dooley is setting the bar very high, because you guys earn trust and start really great conversations that people actually ask you guys for the meetings.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's nice. It feels good. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. Now,
Fantastic.
campaigns. Let's dip into some campaigns, Camile.
Did we answer your question earlier? I feel bad because
Yeah. I wanted to make sure we cover off on that, if that's an important question.
I was just curious, like when you guys run campaigns, like I know you have your event strategy and you guys run killer events, and I won't get you guys to dip in too much into your special sauce, but just like general prospecting, like how are you guys aligning the air cover so that when what you guys are talking about in social or other channels is actually aligning with what sales is doing in the field? And how do those conversations happen?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to so okay, when I first came on, and I think that as like if there are content marketers listening or marketers in general, I think like what was helpful for me was like doing it myself for a while of a couple different things, like listening to gong calls, like listen to calls from sellers. And so it's, actually like, what are we telling people like on those calls, both in terms of like our product, but more important for content, I thought was like their philosophy on selling, right? And so I'd listen to some sellers like talk about like how they sold like themselves and how they thought about selling, and having like that those philosophies, like figuring out what our philosophy on sales is the content, right? Like is our point of view. And so so then I would like take those and put it in like a post or like an image, that conveyed like that point of view. And so I think like understanding your sellers and like how we think about selling, both as like a company and then just again like the more of the thought leadership side from the individual. So I was doing that at first, and then thinking about the at scale part. I think like there are patterns, right? Like both in like the types of pains like that your product solves. And so like I would joke about a lot of our like memes and things are like product led memes, right? Like where it's like it has like the product at the center, or like the pain point. And again, like so when we do start those types of conversations, they're like relevant, right? Like there was one that we did on like what does your sales process look like, and it was a bunch of like junk like stock photos, right? And so that like was an easy thing. That's something that sellers can use in prospecting. Or like the other day, like Kyle came up with a great one, and like we put it in a channel like, hey, like let's use this in prospecting, right? Because it's
in
talking
our
about
sequences now. It's in our sequences.
it's like exactly. So I mean, this is like coming full circle, right? Of like, how do you think about like building a content engine, like versus like a one-off like content? It's easy to think with social, like it's daily, right? Like it's you have to come up with something new every single day, and it can become like the opposite of this, like a hamster wheel. So I think like getting to the point where it's like, how do I make this cyclical, right? Like, and not just cyclical on the channel where I'm like repurposing, these same memes or these same quotes, like in 3 months, but like, how does it help like fuel our sales cycle?
Hmm.
That's
It's
absolutely cool.
it's it's even more powerful because I've seen this literally happen. Because you've asked me whether we want it to be be contextual, and I forget what the other word was because I'm not a marketer, even though I pretend to be. But these are really good questions because we're thinking about what's going to convert, but that's based on what you're reading on LinkedIn, who you're following. Because we've spoken about this a lot of times. So I get done at 5 o'clock, and then Camille's in Pacific, and then I have my moments after. So it starts off with me just like getting out life, and then all of a sudden just I say something, she said, wait, that was interesting, and then some topic comes in and we kind of go into work mode, and we talk about a post that came up, and hey, this topic is like hot in SaaS right now, in sales right now. And there were like two three things we spoke about when I started. uh, so we released our ebook, and we obviously capture a lot of leads from it, but that ebook was based on a very relevant topic. We didn't just, we're like, hey, we're going to release this topic. No, we captured conversations, we heard conversations, we talked about them internally, we saw the impact externally from the pandemic and everything that was going on, and we were like, okay, you know what, this is relevant for the market. Now the recession just happened, and that ebook that we released is now more valid than ever. It's even hotter now. So I've learned this from Camille. Good content is one you can repurpose, and it's, not to toot our own horn, but it's timely right now, right? But it's real. Now, also taking a step back into campaign strategy as a BDR, people say webinar leads don't convert. They don't know how to convert them. Sorry about that. But as a BDR, I made a lot of money. I broke a company's comp plan converting webinar leads, but kudos to our old marketing team. They had a very interesting logic on those marketing leads in regards to what you want to say, what you want, which how you want to nurture them. The conversation was not to convert them, it was to nurture them. So in my interview with Michelle, I basically presented an idea that I would love to come here and work with the team to build that lead category. Then a month or two in after I started, Camille and I started talking about, she told me that she had similar ideas. And my old company was relying on a solid piece of content, a book that was just their be all end all, that was the credibility piece, that had the data, that's going to be like, hey, we've arrived and this is how we're going to start capturing conversations. We spoke about it, and then this one day, it was just ready, it was just there. And I don't know, just everything just kind of clicked. I just had a moment. I remember I was on a call with her, she was just like, I'm going to show you the draft of it. And I got, and I say this to her all the time, I'm like, I love everything, and I say everything is great, but in that moment I'm like, I promise this is actually blowing my mind right now, for what it said, for the plan that we had, for just the ideas that were in my head. Now they're coming to reality with the marketing team, and they're not just my ideas anymore, they're their ideas as well. It's not like I shared them, we all came up with it on our own sides,
Fantastic.
on our own ends, and we came together, and it was like, yeah, we're all thinking about this. And that's where the BDR team is coming in as well, is we're using that to have more conversations where those are, you asked earlier about social. Yes, the BDR team, all sales team, everybody is involved. We get campaign packs, not to go into too much details, but we know what to post, when to post, and how to tweak things for each seller, whether it's Michelle, whether it's Chris, whether it's for me. Um, and on top of that is, when marketing is sending out campaigns, we have scored leads in a way that they get warmed up by marketing emails, then they come to the sales team. So there's no weird overlap going on. Now, at the same time, we also assign the same logic of our webinar leads that they're unaware, and we assign that same logic to our Dooley sign up leads, that people go to other orgs to learn about their product through webinars, blogs, and articles. People come to Dooley to learn about Dooley by downloading Dooley, because that's part of that unaware thing as well. So we're using that same talk track that we use on the webinar lead to convert our product signups. We're not going them and be like, hey, let's get your Dooley. We're also finding out their why behind it with everything. And that's the start of a conversation, a why, and just, it's going multiple places. And then CS is also involved. when people sign up, CS is also sending them helpful information to make sure that they can sign on to Dewey, they can start using it and all that stuff. Now we have to make sure absolutely that the customer experience is clean, it's pristine, it's not messy. They're not getting random Ronald, or sorry, Ronald, you're not random, or Saad, because I love getting involved. I love emailing, cold calling, and all that stuff. So, you know how I said in the beginning that it's very meticulous. All the details are very well thought out. Detail oriented. Like yes, we're data driven, but we're very detail driven.
Nice.
I can only imagine how many messages Camile's got. Yo, check this out.
We have
Another idea.
literally, yes,
Yeah. It's great, but I send I probably send like this. I send the same stuff to Saad sometimes too. So it's good. Like we both get excited. I think about like each other's field, and I tell Saad all the time too. I'm like, I love like how you can bring the energy like every single day. Like it really, I think like it's hard to measure, but it really like pumps me up and like pumps like the rest of the team up and stuff. And so like you're replaceable. So yeah, a couple things I want to add to that of. I think like marketing's job like should still be like ultimately like a lot of times like there are still content leads, right? But I think like your job should be like how can this piece of content, or like will this piece of content be something that my ICP share, right? Like are they going to be sharing it like with the rest of their teams and with other sales leaders, like in our case, right? So like, is that going to happen? Are they going to like post about it or talk about it like publicly about like, if they enjoyed the event or if they got something from the content, right? Like those are kind of like leading indicators. I know like it's very hard to measure content and marketing and things. And so those are just good leading indicators in general. But then ultimately, like, are we like providing enough value, and like, is it clear enough like on our website and like the way that we sell the product, like what the product does, like for you, like not what it does, but like what does it like do for you? And so I think once you have like all of those things, I think coming together, then ideally like they go to the website and they like request a demo. Like that's always like the like number one goal. That's like still going to be a small like percentage of like total consumers of content, right? And that's okay. Like you're not going to get you're never going to get 100% of people being like, I'm ready to buy Dually now. But I think like that should be like our ultimate goal, is again like going back to the beginning of like getting farther and farther down the funnel. Now, like again, like that doesn't always happen, and so it goes back to point number one that we're talking about, of like starting conversations. So like if your content pieces like feel more like conversation pieces of like, here's some really interesting data, like here's like how we've broken it down, or like the story that we see like in this data, and like what's broken, and like what are ways that you can fix it. And that's like a lot of content types that we have, but that's like starting a conversation of like, then like people are either looking at that content because they're having like a similar problem, or like a lot of times actually it's like people that are pretty good at selling already and want to like level up their game even more, and there's like that angle as well. And so then you can just swap ideas, and it ends up being like Saad or Ronald or anyone else talking about like just having a conversation of like, hey, like what are things that you're doing right now, and like here's some things that we're finding like works really well at Dually. Like if nothing else, like you're just adding value and like adding like skills, like and you're gonna be more respected by that person, and probably like a referral source, even if they don't end up like buying you at some point. They're like, these guys like know sales, right? Like they know how to sell. And so so you have like that trust. So to kind of like wrap that up, it's just like marketing should do everything that they can to assist with sales, and that means like helping your actual sales team, but also like helping drive demos, right? Like helping somebody ask for a sale. So that's just like another way that I think about it too, is marketing should do more in the sales process, and then sales should do more, I think, like on the marketing side, or like on and that goes to just like posting on social, or prospecting in general, like building your pipeline. So when you have both of those things like working well together, that's kind of where the magic is.
It sounds absolutely magical. And
Yeah.
Nick, actually, it works back to what you always say. It's like about the ramp up of the people when you're doing social, when you're on social, and like when sales are doing social, it's not just pitching in DMs or pitching on the comments or something like that. How can I start conversations? And Camille, all that thing that you're like supporting with marketing help in terms of how can I start better conversations? What are people trusting? So you don't feel like just a regular salesperson, just another pitch. It's rather let's start a conversation and make them ask for a demo. Then it's much more natural because, well, they're in control and that's how it's always should be. I love it. Absolutely love it.
On that I, what I love about that is selling is simple if done right. Not try to be philosopher Khan over here, but people buy from people they like. People buy from people they like, but more importantly, they buy from people they trust, right?
Yeah.
So the whole social space has, if done right, you can earn trust without even putting that much effort into it. You can scale trust, scalable trust. Oof, never heard that. I haven't. I just came up with that right now. But I think
Philosopher.
I think I clip that. I think that's the source of selling should be, right? Because um, for the BDR, for our BDRs, for our sellers, everything is they come to Dooley and they're just associated with the trust engine. That's the first part. But then you don't get away with that. You need to add to it. Now the door is open for you to start becoming a more trusted seller, Nick. And now it's becoming. This is a real story. When I joined Dooley, we had Ryan who was making LinkedIn videos for AEs, and I was like, I've never seen that anywhere. I was like, what is this? And Ding was rap and Zoe and everything. I was like, what is going on over here? And I was afraid. I was petrified. I was like, I can't do any of this. I told Michelle in my first meeting, I'm like, I'm not here to be an influencer. I don't know first thing about it. And and I started talking to Kelsey, who was helping me write better, and Camille and all that stuff. So on my LinkedIn posts, I have a hashtag as a joke called content on content, content. It started as a joke. It literally, the whole content thing started as a joke. And here we are. So, but in between that, what happened was I made a promise to myself and the business that I'm not going to post any motivational fluff stuff. I'll go get them Tiger. I'll show them how to get them Tiger. I'll share call scripts. I'll share email hacks. I'll share creating hot outbounds for you. I'm like, that's what I want to be known for, because there's some stuff happened with the LinkedIn algorithm and everybody kind of became a thought leader, whereas that wasn't really real. That was never a thing. And I was like, you know what? That wave is going to die out. And I want Dooley and our team and our people to be known for exactly one thing that we're known for, which is selling excellence. And that's social selling. That's social credibility. My BDR, so our BDR playbook was designed in a way that the BDRs, based on the pipeline they'll build, they'll be able to close deals within 6 months. So that was my first batch of BDRs that all three of them are now AEs. They started back in September. My new batch of BDRs, the first one, Ronald, closed 2 logos in last week, and Kofi closed the logo yesterday, which is a non-SaaS vertical. So that whole social credibility piece, everything that's tying into one another. And now it didn't just happen because they closed something. Some of them were webinar leads. They cold called them. They knew Dooley from our partners. They knew Dooley from the social. Everything. By the time we had that conversation, we were like, all right, where's your wallet? Let's look up the pricing page. Let's let's talk. Sorry, I'm not that way. I'm nicer. I do a lot more value oriented problem selling, but the BDR ramp to me is literally creating a space for them where they can. I hire people for potential, but then my job is to create a space for them where they can maximize their potential, where they can turn their weakness to strength and strength to second nature. Um, that's what honestly social selling is doing for us. That's what all our marketing support is doing for us as well. It's the nitrous in our engine. It really is.
Laura, do you have anything you'd like to, any other angle you'd like to take this on?
Well, there've been many. I think it's really beautiful to like to hear firsthand how in a larger startup that handover is working, and also like getting the credibility by scaling the content. So the content is being scaled for the VDRs that you are helping to be more trustworthy as well. So that's I think it's beautiful. I don't have follow-up questions just now. Nick, do you have any questions?
I just love that you guys are all value first. And you guys have really moved to this modern selling where, traditionally we went out in the field, whether we were in our car or wherever, and we were that source of information. But that source changed, and not many companies have changed with it. Like the whole thing, like gated and ungated. The reason that's a conversation is because people don't like to change. There's different ways of doing things now, and you guys are testing everything to see what works. And the one thing I find really amazing that I'd like people to hear is listen how Saad and Camile talk back and forth. Nobody's telling one, it's not a one-way conversation. You guys talk all the time, share ideas, work together. Like, sales is a team sport, and so is building a company. So how can you go and do this if one person is dictating a path when not everybody can have a piece of that conversation, add to it, build up? Like, or else you're just going to be stuck doing the same thing over and over. And, definition of insanity. And I just really appreciate that you guys are pushing the needle by actually testing and working as a team and paying attention. And it's really cool. Like, even you were saying, like, what topics were working for the webinars. I've never heard anybody ask that question, but it just makes sense because when we go and, listen to our own calls and we're going through our game tapes, it's, okay, why did this go off track? What happened? But now if we're taking the game tape all the way to marketing, and it's like, where in this buyer experience did we get knocked off track? How could we be a little bit better tomorrow? How do you lose? Like, that is amazing. So, kudos to you guys.
Yeah, I'll just say like what you said about selling being a team sport. Like we've said that like verbatim, like in Slack channels, right? Like sales is a team sport. Like team selling like is like huge at Dually. Like obviously there are some things like in Dually itself that help with those handovers. Like one of our big use cases is handovers from like BDRs to AEs, like AE to sales. Like having that be like a smooth process, and it should be the same on like the marketing end as well, right? Like a smooth kind of like transition process like between different members of the business, so it just always feels like you are talking to a dooligan, like you're talking to Dooley, rather than just like one person. But also knowing that like different people or different flavors of people are going to appeal to different people, and that's fine, right? Like there's going to be a lot of people that prefer to talk to Saad like rather than me, and that's great. That's like preferable. So just understanding that like we're all like different pieces, like within pieces isn't a good word. All humans like within Dually that all can add value, but ultimately working toward one goal.
Amazing. I just took a peek at the time to be respectful of everyone. Laura, did you want to close us out?
Yes. I think it was a fantastic session. I've actually never heard that much of a collaboration in one session together. It's like you can almost feel how you're actually collaborating together, and not just two persons. It's pretty easy, just one at sales, one at marketing, but the whole team creating both the content and playing that ball back and forth. I think it is something a lot of companies can learn from you. That's kudos to you all.
It's your pride and joy. I love it.
Yeah. And
sure.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining the session today. Saad,
Is there anything
Camile,
you guys want to
it was a
plug at the
pleasure.
end here that you're working on at Dually?
Yeah, I wish I can say it out loud, but yeah, but
Like
let's just
very
put it.
silently.
Yeah, we have a big integration coming out, and it's with one of the big people. So every seller needs it. So, if you haven't downloaded Dually, go check out Dually. If you're a seller, you want to convert more, you want to handle objections on a call, you want to pretend as a manager, if you want to be on a call without being on a call with your reps, go get Dually. If you want your BDRs closing deals, how does that happen? Go get Dually. If you want to be happy, how does that happen? Go get Dually.
My job is done. Like the marketing is done. Yeah, but we did like the last announcement that we did just make was about Dually Bar, and so that's just making like our Chrome extension like stronger. So would definitely recommend that. There's a little bit of a integration like with LinkedIn and that makes it really easy to convert leads on LinkedIn, or when you're on LinkedIn, you're doing the prospecting, researching, making all of that stuff go back to Salesforce. We have like a nice little integration there right now for that. So, and that's not including the integration that Saad's just teasing now.
Well, thank you so much. I know I wish I would have had Dooley years ago. I'm glad that it's here now. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to be watching this a few times today. So if anybody wants to join me, let me know and join in the comments.
Nick,
And
always
Have a good birthday.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Laura.
happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, Camille. Bye.
Bye.